Hey, this is John Bromfield from Cybertrust. If you want to learn how to use your small axe to build an empire, you should be listening to the Small Axe Podcast with my good friend Nico.
Hey guys, it's your boy Nico here from the Small Axe Podcast. I want to show you how to use your small axe to build a lasting empire. You see, not everybody begins their investing career with millions of dollars, a huge network of investors, or the knowledge necessary to become successful in this space, and that's okay. What I focus on here on this podcast is helping you hone your skills, sharpen your tools to become the best investor that you can be. Now, I want you to sit back, relax, and enjoy this show. If you have any questions or you want to reach out to me or the guest, feel free to do so. Love you guys. All right, Small Axe community, it's your boy Nico, and I'm hanging out with a good friend of mine, John Bromfield. Now, John is in the cybersecurity space, and I don't really know much about it, so I really am excited to get him on here today to kind of give us an overview of what it is, how it pertains to real estate, and just kind of pick his brain a little bit so that we can be protected, safe, and secure. So, John, welcome to the show.
Hey, Nico, thank you. And first and foremost, thank you for having me on your podcast today. Yeah, I think having a podcast tailored to the commercial and multifamily real estate industry and a forum to learn about industry trends and updates is important. And it's professionals like yourself that create that space. So I'm appreciative to have the opportunity today to share some of my perspective. For those listening here, I'm John Bromfield. I'm the founder and president of Cybertrust. And for over 20 years, I've dedicated my life's work to both educating and guiding businesses on how to best leverage information technology to help grow and scale their businesses in a secure fashion. Now, in the commercial real estate space, we help property managers, owners, and investors implement the best telecommunication and internet network solutions, the best physical access security solutions, and also implement the best cybersecurity solutions, which is obviously the topic of focus for today's podcast. Ultimately, our goal is really to help businesses remove risk, reduce IT operating expenses, and gain a competitive advantage. At Cybertrust, we have an aspirational goal to optimize IT expenses and secure IT for over 1,000 businesses, Nico, in the next 3 years. And while we work towards this goal, we also look to give back and help secure the future of those in need. And so I'm very proud actually to say that a portion of our proceeds are donated to various charitable organizations. One of my favorites being the Murph Life's Foundation.
Cool, man. I didn't know that. That's great. It always feels good to give back. I think that's something that we all should be doing. Not everybody can do it, but at some point we should all be at least aspiring to do that. John, let's jump into this a little bit. So what are like some of the main cybersecurity threats, like by people like me who own commercial real estate properties? Like, what are some of the threats that we face?
Sure. Yeah, great question, Nico. I think, the main threats, quite frankly, that we're seeing in commercial real estate are very much the same as to what we're seeing across many other verticals. These include the more common threats pertaining to data breaches, ransomware attacks, what are called phishing attempts. This is where a threat actor can actually send an email that looks like a professional email from a professional company, tricking an end user to click on a malicious link or a button, and unauthorized access to sensitive information. Unfortunately, the frequency of these events are continuing to increase and accelerate. And nowadays, cybersecurity is no longer a nice to have. Unfortunately, it's a must have for any business that's handling data and technology.
Yes, gotcha. All right. Well, how do we do it? Like, what do we have to implement? What do we need to bring on board to make sure ourselves, our companies, our properties, our investors are safe?
Yeah, I think, when I'm advising a business, I always like to start with what I call the 3 low-hanging fruit items, right? That we can immediately look at and execute against to mitigate the majority of the standard attacks that are negatively affecting businesses. The first thing that I advise businesses on is first and foremost, let's implement the mandatory employee or an end user awareness training and a certification program around that. In fact, the biggest risk from a cybersecurity standpoint is the human element. The errors that come from an end user really what are causing a lot of what we see today in terms of the breaches. So I think it's important that we're training end users up front on what to look out for, what to do, but more importantly, what not to do. The second thing I do is advise businesses on implementing a very strong password policy. With the advances in artificial intelligence and especially with more computing hash power, we're seeing cyber criminals really are becoming more capable of breaking those traditional 8-character passwords, even the ones that have the upper lowercase and the special, numbers and special characters. Because of the advancements in AI and computing power, 8 digits is not enough. So it's really important that we're creating more complex passwords, and that's got to be a part of that, end user training. And then finally, I advise businesses to implement what we call multi-factor authentication. So you think of your login and your password as a single authentication mechanism. What multi-factor does is it introduces another layer of input. So think about a PIN code, or think about a text message with a string of random numbers that you're presented with that you have to present back. Multi-factor authentication actually mitigates what we've seen to mitigate 60% of the standard attacks out there. So even if a cyber criminal were able to get hold of your password, by having dual factor or multi-factor authentication, you're preventing them from getting access to your systems. So these three items, when you think about them, in total, can be implemented in a matter of days for a business. And with the correct guidance and on their own, are going to mitigate over 80% of the potential risks that we see. Once these foundational elements are in place, we can certainly work with businesses to talk about more advanced measures. So think about firewalls, think about scanning emails, and IDS, which is intrusion detection systems. So these are some of the things that, again, once we get the core foundation set, I'll work with the business to make sure that we're looking at those as well.
Awesome. So I'm thinking from the perspective where I'm coming from, as an owner of properties, right? Number one, but number two, somebody who manages other investors. So we have an investor portal, and my vision right now, what I'm gathering is that, let's say that got breached somehow, and now all of my investors are at risk because their information, their sensitive information, is now that can be, I guess, taken by these cyber criminals or whatever. I don't even know what the term is, right? Yeah. And then they can be, breached as well. So is there anything else that I'm missing from a commercial real estate perspective? Like, what other threats are there besides like gaining access to my personal information, or my business information, or my investors' information?
Yeah, absolutely. So in addition to information access, when you think about what's going on with technology and commercial real estate today, we have the addition of what are called, Internet of Things, right? So internet connected devices, that are becoming more prominent within commercial real estate. So everything from thermostats and obviously elevators and alarm systems and HVAC. So all of those things now have become interconnected and are creating an additional attack vector for malicious criminals to exploit. So what's more concerning here is, you talk about sensitive data and obviously the impact of that, getting unauthorized access to that. Think about a cyber criminal getting, access to some of these IoT connected devices and creating not only, reputational harm, but physical damage potentially to infrastructure and harm to one or many people. Right. So this is becoming a very big item of concern, especially, with the larger multifamily and, commercial dwellings. And this then leads to the second, industry specific challenge that we're seeing, which is gaining a lot more attention and a very important topic given implications to owners and investors, which is around cyber liability insurance. Right. So think about commercial real estate insurance and how you're protected. What happens if you're a victim of a cyber attack? Does your commercial real estate insurance cover that type of event? Maybe, maybe not. So cyber liability insurance is increasingly in demand, but there are a lot more stringent requirements around it. And because of the magnitude of the financial impact, they can be expensive if you're not looking at the right places. So hopefully that helps.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so foreign to me, and I've actually was recently hacked, right? And I lost access to my Instagram account, and then what happened with that is they then accessed people that were friends with me by this. They like lured them in, or phishing, or whatever you called it. Forgive me if I'm not familiar with all the terminology, and I
Right.
ended up losing that and a lot of people that would were following me. I mean, there's so many implications to people breaching, these our systems and things that we do that we
Yeah.
really need to be aware of this stuff.
Yeah, it's a great point. And in fact, one of the other things we should probably talk about is the regulatory and compliance requirements around cybersecurity, especially for regulated verticals, right? So again, we spoke about sensitive information. So think about the data that you're typically working with as a commercial real estate owner or investor, right? So you think about tenant application, tenant leases, you think about business transactions. A lot of sensitive data that's usually in those types of files and documents, things like social security numbers, credit card information, and bank account information even, right? So the nature of this data requires, especially in commercial real estate, that owners and investors are thinking about their regulatory obligations and being compliant. So there are regulations like the General Data Protection Regulation or GDPR for handling personal data, PCI, which is the regulation for any business that's handling personal credit card information. If you're not compliant with these regulations and you are the victim of an attack, not only are you worried about reputational damage, but you can be subject to investigations, you can be subject to fines, and even legal action.
Yeah, can I let me stop you there for a second because you mentioned prior also something about insurance. Um, so I'm assuming that there is insurance available for this, and I don't have any currently. However, like, what's the cost of that, of something like that, of some sort of policy?
Yeah, so it ranges, and really it's going to be based on how well prepared your business is around cybersecurity. So we spoke about some of those different measures that can, be put in place. So when a cyber liability insurance, underwriter is looking at your business, they're looking to see, do you have those measures in place? Are you compliant with certain frameworks with both regulatory and with what we call cybersecurity standards? And then, what do you have from an operational perspective? Do you have a cybersecurity team? Are you working with a third-party cybersecurity organization to help ensure that you have the best cybersecurity posture? So while I can't answer that question distinctly, because it will range, there are certain factors that will, dictate how much you end up paying at the end of it all.
Okay, all right, but there is some sort of compliance that we need to adhere to, um, and how do we, ensure that we are compliant?
Yeah. So again, I think the most important thing here is that there are regulatory standards. We need to be understand what those are. There's a framework in cybersecurity known as the National Standards and Technology Framework, which in cybersecurity speak we reference as NIST or the NIST standard. Considering this audience, I would summarize to say that there are three areas again that every business needs to look at when it comes to compliance. The first one being people, the second one being your processes, your operations, and then your third being your technology. I would strongly recommend that any business in the commercial real estate space really work with subject matter experts. So look at external experts in the field to conduct a regular audit of the business's data handling practices, ensure that you're again compliant with certain standards and frameworks. In fact, I think an audit is really a great first step towards addressing, understanding where the weaknesses and the gaps are for a business. And fortunately, again, there are options. You can work with an external provider, and even look at, leveraging some of the what we call compliance automation tools. And again, these are things that we as Cyber Trust, these are conversations we're having with customers, and we're making sure we're getting them set up with the right people to conduct those types of audits.
Yeah, John. Okay, yeah, that was my next question. I guess I'm assuming you provide that service as well. And I'm assuming we'll get everybody your information by the end, but I'm assuming like it could be start with a phone call or booking a call with you, and then you kind of do some sort of review of how they're operating, what they're using, and then you kind of give them some sort of steps forward. Is that accurate, more or less?
Yeah, no, that's absolutely correct, Nico. We're a strategic advisory organization. Again, we work, across telecommunications, across network, across physical access security and cybersecurity. Our model is one that we're vendor neutral. right? So we'll work with, in a consultative manner with a business to understand where, what their unique requirements are, what they're looking to accomplish. And then we have, vast array of relationships with various suppliers that we do business with. So we'll know what the right solution might look like for that business. And most of the time we'll offer up one or two different options and then work with the business to collaboratively decide what's best for them. The best part is that, we're no cost in our advisory services. So there's really not a lot of risk for, one of your, viewers here, or if they have, someone else they know that needs this type of support. There's really limited risk to engaging us in a conversation and really seeing where we can help them.
Okay, okay. So I like that. I really like that there's no cost involved up front, which is awesome. But there is going to be cost at some point down the road. And is it for us who, with rising expenses with everything from taxes, insurance, interest rates going up, is it affordable for us? Well, maybe, right? Because we have to protect our investors. But
Right.
maybe you can kind of give us some, or give the listeners some sort of gravity, of how serious it could be if there is a breach in our system, or maybe you have some examples. I don't know.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Again, like you said, the magnitude of a cyber attack in commercial real estate can be significant and not only range from reputational damage, but really also to loss of business, and even becoming subject to significant legal action and fines, which can really, put a strain on a business. That I remember, last year there was a metric that I read that 60% of small and medium businesses that become victim of a cyber or ransomware attack go out of business in 12 months. So it's really important to seriously consider the importance of cybersecurity. But take as an example, last year, a commercial real estate services firm experienced a significant cyber attack that disrupted its operations and it compromised sensitive client data. And the interesting thing here is that the attack targeted not their network directly, but the network of a third-party software provider that they were engaged with in business and that the
Mm-hmm.
real estate firm relied on for critical services. So the attackers actually exploited vulnerabilities in the software of the partner's business system, which then allowed them to gain access into the commercial real estate network system. So as a result, a large volume of, again, that sensitive data, including financial information, property records, transaction details, all of that was exposed.
Mm.
And it caused severe disruption to the firm's operations. They had to suspend business. There was a loss of client trust, so they lost a lot of business. And then on top of all of that, they had to go back and deal with legal action, deal with the pain of hiring lawyers and dealing with how to navigate through some significant fines and fees.
Wow, man. Well, it's
Yeah.
I want to obviously learn how to mitigate against this. But before we get there, I kind of want to figure out, we're talking about attackers, and it almost sounds like a movie. I can picture this whole movie scene. Where are these attackers coming from? Are they foreign? Are they robots with all this AI? You don't know what's going on in the world right now.
Yeah.
Who are these attackers?
You don't want to hear the scary thing, Nico. Um, More and more, we're seeing amateur attackers that are impacting businesses, and it's because of something that you alluded to, right? So, with advancements in AI and advancements in what we're calling, cyber threats as a service, there are organizations out there that are selling the code to breach systems to amateurs that can then run it without having to have much knowledge or skill and can cause damage to a business. So again, to kind of come back to your question, it spans from the nation state actor that's looking to do some damage at the federal level or to infrastructure to espionage at the business level or competition at the business level. But then again, more scary could be that 14-year-old kid that's messing around with some dark web code and pointing it at your systems.
Jeez, man, that's wild. Okay. And that is where things do get a little sketchy and scary, especially if there's somebody who's, if they are somebody that's young or amateur, like you're saying, and they don't really know exactly what they're doing. That is even more scary than somebody who's professional and targeting something, in my mind. All
Yeah.
right, so let's talk about steps to mitigate these risks.
Yeah, so as mentioned, what we're seeing, especially with larger organizations, is they'll look to consider standing up their internal cybersecurity structure, right? So hire cybersecurity experts to help them set up the guidelines, set up the policies, and really look at the architecture of their IT infrastructure and put in the defense measures in place. But what we're seeing more increasingly, because if you think about it, if you're hiring an internal team, you got the fully loaded cost of one or more people that are in high demand. In fact, they say that there are more openings for cybersecurity positions than there are people to fill those roles. So, you're hiring someone that's in high demand. So that comes with its own set of risks that they may leave in a year or two. They can be very expensive. And then secondly, you got to make sure you're making the right hire. And how do you do that if you don't even know, what to look for, if you don't have that kind of competency or knowledge as, someone that's hiring into your business? So because of that, what we're seeing become more common with businesses is they're looking to what are called security as a service providers. And I work with a number of national security as a service providers. They provide all the skills. They have a team of experts. So it's kind of like that Verizon model, right? Where you've got a team of 40, 50 people working, on behalf of your business to secure it. You don't have to worry about them leaving. And when you look at the pricing models, it's actually a fraction of what it would take to build out your own team internally. So this is becoming a very popular and in-demand option for businesses to look at, and something we at CyberTrust help our customers at looking at as well.
Gotcha. Wow, man, there's a lot. I mean, there's a lot. And like you mentioned in there, I mean, the landscape is always changing with the technology. It's scary. So, all right. So are there any industry specific challenges that commercial real estate companies face in cybersecurity and compliance?
Yeah, I think again, the specific things are, not only having to worry about your traditional IT footprint, but again, looking at the internet connected aspects of your infrastructure outside of the data center. So looking at, again, those elevators, those HVAC systems, looking at where the attack vector goes outside the data center. And then again, looking at that cyber liability insurance, I think it's important, especially in this space, to make sure that, you look at your traditional insurance. Are there provisions in that insurance to cover you in a cyber attack situation? If not, what, do you need some additional insurance coverage or, some additional clauses in that current contract to help cover you as well? And then finally, as we mentioned before, you got to look at your third party providers, right? That you're working with, your business partners. As we saw in that example, you got to make sure they're secure and their networks are secure. If you're interconnected with another business partner systems, you can get breached just by default.
Yeah, that makes sense, man. We need to be proactive rather than reactive.
Oh yeah, great way to put it.
Yeah, scary, man. John, it's been awesome talking to you today. Honestly, I really knew nothing about this space, even though I was a victim of cybersecurity. That's what I'm going to call myself at this point. And it was there's an emotional devastation combined with obviously financial and other issues involved with this that people don't talk about enough, because there is, so it's almost like being, somebody breaking into your house. There is an emotional component to it. If you feel kind of like exposed, you don't feel comfortable. And I think it is really, really important and relevant today to make sure that we are protected, not only ourselves, but our families, our loved ones, our investors, our businesses. Everything needs to be protected because the world is changing, man, and it's changing fast. So I appreciate you coming on here today and sharing all this knowledge. Is there anything that I missed that you want to kind of touch on?
Yeah, no, Nico, I think you put it very well there. And thanks again for allowing me the opportunity to share this information with your viewers. I hope they find it valuable and insightful, and it inspires some action. To your point, be proactive. I think in closing, what I'd like to say is this. Yes, cybersecurity can be quite involved, and it entails, again, many facets around people, process, and technology. So I can understand why business owners and investors and property managers may not know what to do or where to start. But fortunately, there are solution providers out there that can greatly simplify this for them. And it's really not as expensive as some might think. And I'd like to say that, for us personally at CyberTrust, we give businesses and business owners the easy button to cybersecurity. And we're on a mission to do that for over 1,000 new businesses in the next 3 years. And, let me not leave out the best part again, as I mentioned, we're a strategic advisory service provider. We're no cost. So again, there's really no risk to engage us in a conversation and work on defining a potential solution. So for your listeners out there, if you're someone that is, in need, or someone that has a need around cybersecurity, telecommunication networks, physical access security, please reach out to us directly. Mention Nico Salgado and the Small Axe podcast, and we'd be more than happy to help.
Awesome.
Thanks, Nico.
Oh, no problem, man. I want to get everybody some form of contact, maybe a phone number or an email in a second.
Yeah.
But I also wanted to say, I think everybody should reach out. Everybody should kind of just see, because you can help them, as you've helped me decipher where they're at risk, where they can be, and it's free. So why not? So I think everybody should just reach out, kind of have an initial conversation about how they're currently operating and what they're currently protected with, and if they need further protection. So awesome. John, let's transition to our final question. Then we're going to get listeners a form of reaching out to you, because I know they're going to want to follow up with you. So let's imagine, John, it was 100 years from now. Everybody's protected. Your family and your loved ones are all safe. They're not under threat of any attackers from 14-year-olds or from professionals, right?
I love it.
And they want to write a book about you to honor you and your life and what you provided the world with. What would you want to title this book?
Wow, that's a great question, Nico. I think they would title it, he gave and lived his life to the fullest. Again, I'm a big believer, you've got one life, so you gotta, work hard and play harder. I love to travel with my family, especially, and it's all about experiences for me. But just like I mentioned at the beginning, I'm a firm believer that you got to pay it forward, right? So I've been very fortunate in my history, so I look to pay it forward, and wherever I can help people. That's what I love about what I do, because I know I'm helping people and protecting people, and he gave and he lived his life to the fullest.
John, I love it, man. Thank you so much. So I learned a lot, and I'm going to need to continue talking to you, but I know that my listeners would like to reach out to you as well. So how can they get in touch with you?
Yeah, absolutely. So our website is www.cybertrustconsultinggroup.com. You can easily click on the calendar button off the main page there to schedule a 30-minute consultation with me. You can also reach me at john.bromfield, Bromfield, at cybertrustconsultinggroup.com. And please mention the Nico Salgado Small Axe podcast, when you reach out, so I know, kind of where this is getting sourced from. Again, Thank you, Nico. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome, man. Yeah, thank you. Have a great day.
All right. Hey, Small Axe community. I would like to say thank you for listening to another episode of my podcast, where we show you how to use your small axe to build a lasting empire. Now, if you liked what you heard, it would mean the world to me if you would subscribe, leave a 5-star rating, and write a review. Also, if you want to get in touch with me, go to my website at smalaxecommunities.com. Book a call with me. And until the next episode, keep sharpening those axes.